Geekonomy, I'll start in Hebrew and then I'll switch back to English. The episode itself is in English, only the opening will be in Hebrew and I'm telling the regular listeners about the episode itself and doing the commercial side. So if you want to jump to the conversation itself, which was recorded in English, just go 2-3 minutes into the future. But now, let's start with the Hebrew part. אז ה-31 ביולי 2025, והבוקר הייתה לי את הזכות הגדולה לארח את האדמירל לשעבר מייקל רוג'רס. מייק היה אדמירל בצי האמריקאי, מה שנקרא גנרל 4 כוכבים, המקביל לאלוף, אני חושב, אצלנו, פלוס מינוס. הוא הוביל במסגרת שירותו הציבורי האמריקאי את ה-Nsa, שזו המחלקה האמריקאית שאפשר להגיד מקבילה ל-8200 אצלנו, הכי גדולה בעולם כנראה. הוא הוביל את כל מה שקשור להגנת סייבר סקיוריטי על ארצות הברית. היה בזמן הממשל האמריקאי, ונכנס לתפקיד מיד אחרי כל מה שקרה עם סנודן. אז הבן אדם נכנס למגפיים נורא גדולות, ולתפקיד מאוד מאוד רגיש. דיברנו על ה-Nsa, דיברנו כיום, רגע, אני רק אוסיף, שכיום הוא שותף בקרן ההון סיכון הישראלית טים 8, ונמצא בדירקטוריון של חברת קלארוטי, שאת המנכ"ל שלה אירחתי לא מזמן, את יניב. אז דיברנו על כל הנושאים האלו שכללו את ה-Nsa עצמה, ואיומים על העולם הערבי, ומה סין ורוסיה וקטר יכולות לעשות, וההבדלים בין מדינה ששומרת על כל החוקים מבחינת הסוכניות האלה כמו ארצות הברית לדבריו, לעומת מדינות כמו ישראל שהן יותר גמישות בנוגע לסטנדרטים החוקיים שלהם, על הפלוסים, על המינוסים, על להילחם בסינים עם יד אחת קשורה מאחורי הגב, כמו שאני הגדרתי את זה, על ה-F-35 שהתוכניות שלו נגנבו, ועל מה אפשר לעשות כדי שה-F-47 לא ייגנב, על צעדים שארצות הברית עשתה, על איך הוא רואה את שוק הסייבר סקיוריטי לשנים הקרובות. הפרק מרתק עם בן אדם שהגיע לדבר בצורה הכי פתוחה שהוא יכול, במסגרת כל מה שהוא יודע וידע. ולפני שנגיע לפרק עצמו, אני אספר לכם על נותני החסות שלנו. והפעם, נותני החסות שלנו זו הייטק זון פור סטארט-אפס. עכשיו גם לסטארט-אפים. לאורך השנים, הייטק זון היה שמור, או לפחות נתפס כמשהו ששמור רק לארגונים גדולים, שיכלו להציע לעובדים שלהם כל מיני הנחות משמעותיות, כמו 20-50% ברשתות אופנה, מסעדות, פנאי, גאדג'טים, את כרטיס האשראי של הייטק זון, שהוא ללא דמי כרטיס, עם החזר כספי חודשי באתר של עד 15%, ועמלת המרת מטח של 1%, ולעיתים מבצעי 0%, שזה אחד הדברים היותר נחמדים שיש כשתופסים אותם. בהייטק זון יש מעל 30,000 מוצרים במחירים מהטובים בישראל, ועכשיו הם רוצים להציע את זה גם לסטארט-אפים, לא רק חברות גדולות. אז אם גם לכם יש חברה עם מתחת ל100 עובדים, יש עכשיו הצעת ערך ייחודית, כנסו לאתר שלהם, תירשמו, הם ידברו איתכם, תראו אם מתאים, ושיהיה לכם ולעובדים שלכם המון בהצלחה. ועכשיו לפרק. Geekonomy, the 31 of July 2025, and this morning or early afternoon I have the big pleasure of hosting the former Admiral for the US Navy, Mr. Mike. You said you want to keep it
please,
private.
Call me Mike.
Michael Rogers, if you don't mind. Mike, a 4-star general, former head of the Nsa, former head of the Cybersecurity Threat Intelligence
of Cyber
Agency?
Command, U.S. Cyber Command.
Yeah, and the current, are you the head of the director?
I'm an operating partner at Teammate.
The Teammate and Clarity.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So,
head the advisory board at Clarity.
So you've been busy, sir.
I have, but don't we all want to be engaged in life? I don't want to drift through life. I want to be engaged in life.
Yeah, I want to tell you that I spent some time with Shimon Peres, and until he was 90-something, and just keeping himself busy, you can see that while he's busy, his mind is working, is sharp as a nail, and the minute that you see that the tension is off, okay, he's 95, or he's 94, or he's 93, or whatever, and I think that's just it.
I think there's something to be said for staying mentally, emotionally, physically engaged in life. I think it's better. It's healthier. It's better.
Especially when the heads of states these days are 75 and above.
We seem to be getting older with our elected leadership these days.
Yeah, but it is what it is. We are doing the trade-off between experience and...
It's a democracy. It reflects the will of the people.
It's something. Let me ask that. I have a hobby of when you're saying it's democracy and it's the will of the people. I have a hobby on my X account just to point to accounts who are clearly originated from Iran, Turkey, Russia, Qatar, whatever. They are writing in Hebrew. They are disguising themselves as lunatic right-wing or delusional left-wing, and they are very stereotypical. That's the reason I use those obscene words. And they are trying to say that we need to conquer everything, and Palestinian lives don't matter, or everything is done, Israel is done, we should leave the state. And it's not like there's no Israelis thinking that, but the fact that other nations are doing it, and they're trying just to elevate the temperature, and you're saying it's the will of the people, and I'm saying, maybe it's not. Maybe these days, you can alter the will of the people. And I think it's related to stuff that you've been doing over the years.
I mean, the whole challenge of misinformation, disinformation, how do you manipulate perceptions? How do you alter reality?
Is it a cyber threat?
Oh, it's certainly, there's a cyber dimension to it, because cyber gives it broad connectivity, broad access, enables that kind of false information to reach a massive global audience in a way that it wouldn't without that network technology. The reality is it wouldn't be as effective.
It used to be, the CIA that are doing such things. And I think these days, and you can see it in Israel, like the differences between the Mossad or whatever, the equivalent of the CIA, MI5, MI6, to the equivalent to the NSA. And it seems that in 2025...
Now, they're all different. I would disagree a little bit. They're all different.
With the parallel...
They all have different missions. They all have different responsibilities. They all have different capabilities. Now, in some areas, they're duplicative. There are some things that NSA did that Mossad or the CIA did, but there's lots of things that Mossad or the CIA, as examples, do that NSA, for example, doesn't have that capability, nor does it have that legal charter to do in our system.
I can't believe that the NSA, with all the experience, budget, and exposure to the best and brightest people, there's something that the NSA cannot do. Or maybe you don't want to do it, maybe you need more time, but...
No, the NSA operates within a legal construct, and it is very specific about what we can do, what is legal, and what is illegal. And I'll only speak, I believe it's true today, but I'll definitely speak from my time as the director. We will not do anything that is illegal.
Okay, so that's something different, because of course that I think everybody can agree that the Israeli agencies are way more loose than others.
It's probably fair to say that they've been granted a broader set of authorities, that they're given more discretion in some ways. And again, every nation has to decide what's right for itself. In the United States, we have a history of suspicion of government. It's been that way since we were created 250 years ago.
1776, you said, we formed an armed militia to do exactly that.
It is. There has always been in the U.S. construct a strong skepticism of the role of government, and somewhat of a fear that we need to be careful that government doesn't become too large, too powerful, exert too much impact on our citizens, that it doesn't take away the rights of our citizens. In the U.S. construct, that's incredibly important. It always has been.
I'm sure that every American citizen would love to hear you say that, but having said that, the organization that you led for 4 years has been known to do, or been suspected to do, the exact opposite.
Nope. I will only say in the 4.5 years I was a director, didn't do one damn thing illegally. Let me repeat that. Didn't do one damn thing illegally. We won't do that.
How did you cope with the allegations? Because, in these days, conspiracy theories are running rampant. You don't need podcasts for that. You have everything. You have Reddit. You have Reddit accounts directed only to stuff that supposedly the NSA did. You know that. And the American agencies, as are the Israeli ones, are not really commenting on that. It seems, from where I see, that they are just leaving the conspiracy theories be, and we don't want to interact with them, so we don't give them credit. I think that's the line, at least in Israel.
Well, right. Now, there is that dimension to it. The thought that if you engage with people who just don't want to listen, who are so certain that they know truth, that they don't want to listen to an alternative viewpoint, there is always a question, is it worth your time? Will you be effective in engaging with people like that? And I'm the first to admit, I would encounter like that people in the United States who would tell me, hey, look, we think the NSA is conducting illegal activities. We believe the NSA is abusing our rights as citizens. And they're entitled to that opinion. I would only say to them, look, we comply with the law. We have a court system that oversees what we do. We have a Congress that oversees what we do. The amount of time I had to spend as the director, as well as other members of our team, had to spend before Congress walking them through what we're doing, what we're not doing. The amount of times that we were reviewed every year by the director, the office of the director of national
to uphold the law, and everything is on point, and everything is as it should. And I think that's the way you should act as an agency with so much power and so much capabilities. But the opposing forces against you, and I'm not going to name names like China or everything because everybody knows what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. They do not play by the same rules.
Right. They have a different set of rules. They have different societies, different values.
Exactly. And when I see the J-35 taking off, and I'm saying the U.S. invested so much money, so many resources to gain the upper end, to make sure that you have the best jets, the best technology. And on the other hand, there's another actor who's saying, I can shortcut that.
Yep.
And they're using, it's not a secret. It's not like I'm saying, according to foreign press. No,
hey, look,
everybody knows.
Right, I have testified many times. The U.S. government position has been very direct that we have observed China in an orchestrated strategy and campaign to steal intellectual property from the United States, to generate economic advantage, to enhance their national security, to save them time and money. You know, we've been very public about this.
Yeah, so you need to protect against it. And that's one of the areas that you as the head of the NSA
right, cybersecurity, right,
for.
Cyber defense.
And of course, as a private investor these days, and if one side, one party is not playing by the rules, and the other one isn't it a situation where you're trying to fight with one hand behind your back?
Look, it certainly makes it tougher, but then that's life. We deal with people all the time. Think of our personal lives. Think about when you were a kid. Did you have to deal with bullies? Did you have to deal with people?
Life is not fair.
Who said, look, your view may be that you don't like fighting. Hey, I like fighting, and guess what? Conclusion. So you try to do what's right, what's best for you. You try to do what reflects your values. You try to do what you believe is right, and you try to stay away from that which you believe is wrong, and you try not, which is one of the big things I always thought is important for a democracy, but it can be very painful for a democracy. In times of stress, in times of great pain, it is a very human emotion to want to lash out and respond to others just as they have responded to you.
And it's not like it did not happen in the U.S.
Correct,
in the last few years. And I'm not using any metaphor to hide my intentions. The U.S. did lash out against China in a few instances.
Now, tell me what you mean by lash out.
I know, the head of Huawei getting arrested when they board a plane from Canada to the U.S.
Right, but again...
tariffs. So, there are ways to fight. Let me give you like a specific example. I used to work for a company called ECI, like way back in the day, 15 years ago. We've built IPD slums, just communication, fiber optics in the streets. And Huawei was, before everybody knew the company, they competed. And the Chinese government subsidized the contracts in Germany and England. And, there are backdoors, there are ways when you put down a network infrastructure and...
I'm going to push back specifically on the example you gave. So let's take that instance where a Huawei executive is detained in Canada. So why? So at the time, the U.S. had a court case alleging that Huawei was bypassing U.S. sanctions and providing capability to sanctioned individuals. We went to the Canadian government and said, look, you have these individuals that will be passing through Canada. They are currently being charged for a violation of U.S. law. Therefore, we would like to potentially have you apprehend them, and then we'll want them extradited. That is a legal, formal process.
Of course.
That process allows both parties to provide a perspective. The U.S. can't direct Canada to do it. We had to ask them. And then Canada very said, okay, we'll detain them, but we're going to put them through the Canadian process we use to determine if, in fact, the U.S. has a valid reason here and that we should, in fact, deport them to the United States to allow the United States to take this legal action against them. Canada went through their process. Ultimately, between Canada, China, the United States, an agreement was reached and the individuals went back home. So I very much disagree with that example.
Do you feel there's...
I would argue you may not like the process. You would run into this at NSA sometimes where people would say to me, hey, what NSA is doing is illegal. I say, no, it's legal in accordance with the law. And then I would say, well, they would often say to me then, well, hey, but we don't think it's right. I said, that's fair. So then what you ought to do is push to get the law changed.
Do you think there are specific scenarios, like for instance, when the FBI has a device, an iPhone, for instance, but the law protects Apple from giving the FBI the tools to infringe on the rights of that individual, but there's matters of security, of public security.
Right, although remember, in that case, we're going now back to a shooting in California if my memory's right.
2016, something like that?
15, I think, 2015, 2016. FBI went to a court in the United States. So we have a device used by the perpetrator, the individual who it was a individual who ended up shooting children at a school in California. I think San Bernardino, California, if my memory's right.
I think you're right.
In any event, the FBI got the individual's device. Now, what was interesting about the device, it wasn't the individual's. He was a county employee, happened to work for county government. The FBI went to the county, and the county said, we have no problems with you accessing the phone. The FBI went to a court and said, hey, phone associated with the individual, we would like a court order compelling Apple to give us the access code so we can then access the phone on our own. We're not asking them to access the phone for us. We're asking them to help us deal with one of the security features Apple quite rightly has put in their phones. And Apple's
one of the flagship features, if we may.
And Apple's view was, hey, look, we don't think that's appropriate. They refused to comply. Ultimately, Apple and the FBI had a series of conversations. I was tangentially involved in this, and ultimately made the decision we're just going to leave it alone. And the FBI said, hey, we'll try to use other means to gain access to the phone, which they ultimately did. And so again, I'm going, guys, there's a legal framework here. There's a series of checks and balances. Both sides exercised their legal options. That's the way our system works. It's not like the big bad government just says, I'm going to access device and company X, you're going to do whatever we want. It just, at least I'll only speak for the United States. That's not the way our system works. It's not perfect. I don't want to pretend that it is. And certainly there are many people who are frustrated by it, who still believe that the government has too much power, who still believe, well, can we trust a court? Is a court really focused on our best interest? Hey, Congress that creates these laws, do we trust them? Do we believe in them? Do we think that they are exercising their jobs in trying to protect our rights and trying to serve us as the citizens? That's been a debate as long as America has been a nation, and I suspect it always will be, and it should be.
It's not only even America. You see the Europeans pushing the boundaries when it comes to privacy, the demand to allow, private people to have a complete private communication lines, and it didn't used to be like that. If you see just communication protocols, GSM and earlier protocols, they were encrypted with 56 bits or whatever to allow governments to listen in. That's one of the reasons.
It is.
And these days you have WhatsApp and you have other protocols that are really safe.
Yeah.
And it's a trade-off between privacy, which is a right, a very basic right, if you ask a European.
Very valid concern.
But on the other hand, it allows the bad actors to work without any interruption.
It is interesting. Again, I only speak for the United States. Until we got to the digital age, there was literally no communication that was beyond the government's access as long as it had a court order.
Yeah.
But with the digital age, you started to see a real shift, both from a technical perspective, where suddenly network operators would say, well, we can't override the cryptographic protection. We can't override the encryption. We built it this way. We just can't go in and change it.
Ask Claude Shannon. Go to Boston. You have a big statue of a guy.
Yeah.
He basically proved it. There's some methods that are unbreakable.
And so there is an interesting discussion in societies now today, then in democratic societies about, okay, are we comfortable with that? We want to ensure the protection of our citizens, both from a national security perspective and what the government does. But quite frankly, we also want to protect our citizens from unauthorized access, whether it be by the government, whether it be by other nations, whether it be by other individuals. We want to make sure people feel confident that they can execute a life with a level of privacy, that they can maintain a level of protection against others accessing, what they're doing in life. And so societies are trying to figure out, how do we deal with this? Technology is both a challenge and an opportunity here. It's a challenge in the sense that, as we were talking about, in some areas you need to overcome the technology. On the other areas, the technology actually is there to provide that kind of security for us. So it's not that technology is good or bad. It's not that governments are inherently good or bad.
No, it's a complex discussion.
Right. It's not that people are inherently good or bad. It's that we've got two competing, in some ways, imperatives. Government wants to defend the nation and ensure the security and safety of its citizens. Citizens I want a level of protection from this government because I'm not exactly sure about it, in our society at least, that healthy skepticism, as well as, but I want to lead a life where I have some measure of protection in terms of others not being aware and having knowledge who I talk with, what I say, what I do, how I spend my time, how I spend my money, where I go, what I choose to do. Hey, I want to protect that. That's my right as a citizen in democratic society. So those are both two very valid concerns. And now we've spent the last, I would argue, 20 years trying to work our way through it.
I think we're not done.
No, we're not. This is an ongoing, and it should be. This is something that we should always be concerned about, both of these imperatives.
I think we're nearing a point where the public discussion, at least in the level of the Congress or somewhere, that at least the discussion of people being the right to remain anonymous, which is not in the Constitution.
Right, no.
It's not. Yeah. It's just a modern concept that we chose to have with modern technology and modern life, that to remain anonymous over the internet. And it poses a lot of risks.
Yeah, but I would also argue anonymity in the digital age is almost impossible. If the goal is...
As the head of the NSA,
If the goal is to be anonymous, I would argue that just given our business models, just given the amount of information as an individual you have to provide to interact, whether it's buying something, whether it's going somewhere.
There is a KYC level when you're doing purchases, when you're doing digital purchases, but you look to your right and to your left, but when you finished your position as the head of the NSA, alongside, there was the crypto revolution. And now, for the very first time...
At the same time.
At the first time, but between 2013 and 17, it was a nice gimmick. And since then, when the actual rails of the infrastructure in the world are switching from, the US dollar to the equivalent of the USDT or something, you have the option, one would say, that you can be somewhat of an anonymous player.
It's not a real. I don't think
you leave a trail. Of course, you leave a trail, and you leave more of a trail than just passing envelopes of dollars.
That's why I say I think anonymity is really difficult. Forget about the role of government. Anonymity is really difficult in this digital, highly interconnected, hyper-connected world we've created. Now, that's anonymity and privacy are not the same things.
Of course,
they're not synonymous. I think we can achieve a reasonable level of privacy. I think we can achieve a reasonable to high level of security. I think anonymity becomes very difficult to achieve, just given the way we've created this digital world.
Do you think there's a point where the US government, or maybe another government, maybe the EU would say, hey, Mr. Musk, hey, Mr. Zuckerberg, I want you to demand a KYC process when somebody opens an account. You don't have to share it, but we want to have a potential access to it with a court subpoena or something. But we want to have the option.
I mean, it's possible. You've heard that argument with encryption, for example.
I can see these days that if I file a complaint to Mr. Musk, he's sending me to Authentics, an Israeli company, to do a short KYC process with an ID, and only then I can file a complaint, and I get it. I understand why, but on the other hand, I understand the objection that some people might have.
I mean, it's possible, but it's probably not likely. I just think...
Because of the public discourse?
Yeah, I just don't think it's likely. I only speak for the United States. I don't think it's likely in the U.S., in part because of this concern about, by creating the opportunity for access, even with the protection of a court order, there are many people in the United States who would argue, yeah, but I'm not really comfortable with that approach. Now, look, that's the world I grew up in. So I was comfortable with the idea of, as long as I could convince a judge that there was a legal, valid basis to our request, and the judge agreed, then we would have the legal authority to do what we
How hard is that? Can I open a bracket? How hard is it? Like the legal process as a 4-star general in the U.S. Navy to ask a judge to do something. How hard is it? If you can be as frank as you can be.
So, number one, there's a series of authorities that you ask for approval on an annual basis. For example, you might say, hey, it's January, and you go to the court and you say, you normally do it a few months earlier, but you say, hey, I'm asking for authority to do the following things for the course of the next year. The amount of paperwork, you can't see visually, but
no, there's a camera. People watching can see it.
The paper stacks that I mean, literally for a single court order, I might give them a stack of documentation this high. It would talk about why, what's the target, what's the method we're going to use, how are we going to do this, what levels of protection are there, how is the data going to be used. We'd have to provide all of that to the court. And the judge in the court, again, we would do that months in advance because you don't go through that stack of paper like that. It takes some time. So there's the annual approvals. Then there's a series of scenarios where we might become aware of a situation and we'd say, hey, look, I want to target this specific individual, particularly, for example, NSA is a foreign intelligence organization. The United States cannot collect in the United States. It's illegal. We're a foreign intelligence organization. It collects outside the United States. It also has legal prohibitions about collecting against a U.S. person.
Wait. What's the definition of outside of the U.S. when you're talking about digital information?
Outside, if it's not well, again, there's a whole lengthy of this. So
it's not that easy of a definition.
It's the territory. It goes into where IP addresses are registered. It goes to, for example, a ship or aircraft. What nation state is the ship or aircraft registered in?
Well, they are flying under a specific flag.
If it's, so there's a whole series. You make a good point. There's a whole series of what is the definition of U.S. But simplistically, look, NSA never collects in the United States. We're a foreign intelligence organization. But to collect against a U.S. person, for example, outside the United States, we got to get a court order. And we had to convince the court that the reason that we are doing it is because this American is acting as an agent of a foreign government or a foreign power. It might be a terrorist group. It might be...
money laundering?
It might be a foreign nation that we have major issues or concerns with. But we had to convince the court, look, we're interested in getting the authority to target this individual because they are working for a non-U.S. government, or they are working for a terrorist group. We generally had to show that we believe them to be a threat to the United States.
Yeah, there's many dual citizens. We had a spy from Israel. That's a famous occasion.
Yeah.
And the American caught him, and he spent dozens of years in jail, as one should if you betray your country. And there are occasions of people from China and other places. It's not like there are not a lot of people with dual citizenship.
Right. But having said that, the numbers are incredibly low. My memory, and this is from memory,
hundreds of thousands?
Nope. 12. I think
12 getting caught.
12 individuals. I can remember testifying before Congress. I can't remember the specific year, but I was asked, so how many are you targeting? How many court orders do you have? And I said, I think it was 12.
What?
I think we have court orders to specifically target 12 individuals who we believed were acting as an agent of a foreign power or who were acting as an agent of an entity that was attempting to conduct activities against the United States. Again, we try to protect U.S. persons, even outside the United States.
Do you believe it's only 12?
Oh, yes.
Do you really? No. Wait. Let me rephrase. I understand that you actually targeted only 12 people. Do you really believe it's only those dozen that you should?
Nope. So, no. Stop. 12 individuals targeted. That's from memory.
Yeah.
Now, we also acknowledged in the course of the way the global telecommunications structure is created, that there is no doubt that in conducting our activities outside the United States, we are going to run into American individuals, American communications. So then we had to say to the court, here's the protections that we're going to put in place to ensure the security of that data that we collect. We did things like, we won't refer to a U.S. person by name in any of our reporting. We never use names.
You give him an alias?
We just talk. I'm trying to remember the phrase we used to use. In those individuals, in those circumstances where, number one, you wouldn't report unless you thought there was something of significance or value. If you thought there was something of significance or value, you did not use the name. You said U.S. person 1, U.S. person 2, U.S. person 3 as a way to try to protect their identity. You restricted the number of people within the organization who could access that data. At one point, I think, again, I'm doing this from memory. I think I testified, I was asked one year, well, how many people in your organization, the number is classified, but it's in the tens of thousands. How many people in your organization can actually access some of this information you're telling us that you will acknowledge will inadvertently collect
infringe on the rights of an American citizen.
That will contain American information? And I said, out of the tens of thousands, I think it's 45. And of the 45, as the director, I personally approve every one of the 45. We have a running list that I would review every year as to who had access and why. So we put these series of protections in place because we acknowledge, look, we are going to encounter Americans while we are out there looking at communications around the world. Outside the United States, we acknowledge Americans are all over the world.
Okay, let me now ask it from the other side. Usually, when you deal with cybersecurity, and a lot of Israelis are doing it after they served in those specific army units, and then they went to the private market and they started companies. And usually, when you talk with them, they say, "Listen, there's endless amount of 0 days. Everything is breachable. I trust nothing digitally. That's just the way it is." As the former head of the NSA, how do you feel about when you encounter, you have a book of threats, you see just the amount of 0 days everywhere, on iPhones, on Windows machines, on Mac OSs, on new machines that have been developed on the servers of the hyperscalers, just the amount of vulnerabilities, especially these days where everyone has access to write applications with a few prompts, and you're now supposed to deal with it.
So I'd make two comments. The first is, forget about 0 days for a moment. If you look at cyber penetrations, whether they be against companies or individuals, probably 80 to 85% don't use a 0 day. They exploit a known vulnerability.
Or just send you an email and somebody clicks.
Right, not 0 days. Now, in terms of the question, I can remember having this discussion with President Obama one time. Mike, how confident should we be that our systems are going to be adequately protected?
Wait. Give me the surrounding. You're in the Oval Office, President Obama.
I think this was in the Situation Room of the White House.
Okay, the situation, you're in the White House.
Me,
the President of the United States sits, puts his hands on his lap and says, okay, Mike, give me the down low. How safe are we?
And I said, look, sir, here's the challenge. As a guy who both defends and penetrates networks for a living, that's what we did at NSA and at Cyber Command. We both penetrated and defended. I said, look, the reality is for an adversary who is determined, focused, and willing to spend time, there's a really high probability of success in terms of their ability to penetrate. For example, I said, look, sir, it's much easier to be an attacker than it is a defender. As a guy who does both of these roles, life is much easier as an attacker than it is as a defender. Number one, So it's not that we should feel terrible because so you can't guarantee me that no one will ever. I said, no. What it highlights is we need to build a strategy when it comes to cybersecurity that is focused on both trying to stop people from getting in, but also the strategy has to acknowledge that there is a probability that in some areas we're going to fail. So part of your strategy should be, so how are you going to deal with it when you fail? That's where you get into the whole idea of resilience. And increasingly, I tell, companies, governments that still ask my opinion, cybersecurity has two components, cyber defense and cyber resilience. We have tended to focus on cyber defense, build the walls higher, deeper, build a moat. My view is cyber defense is important, but cyber resilience is the real key. It's just so hard to guarantee no one will ever gain access. You need to ask yourself, so how do I create a structure, a process? How do I build a world in which I acknowledge that there's a probability that I'm going to fail, but I'm going to build in my strategy the ability to really recover quickly and to make it difficult for an adversary? For example, when you just focus on cyber defense on the perimeter, I've seen a lot of organizations, they spend hardly any time monitoring internal activity so that once the actor gets in, they can move laterally, assume identity, upgrade their administrative access.
When you're talking, I stare at my screen and the warp by Cloudflare is flashing because something happened on the zero trust and I need to just re-authenticate the session because these days the common just understanding is everything is breachable, as I said.
Right. So fragment your network, monitor your internal activity. Think about data extraction strategies, about how you stop data extraction. There's lots of things you can do.
That's only data, but these days, when everything becomes more automated, and it's not only data theft, it's not like I'm afraid that the F-47 is going to get stolen as the F-35 allegedly got stolen. On the other hand, with drones, with robotics factories, with electric cars, so many things are now being controlled digitally.
Right, so you're concerned about functionality control. Hey, I don't want someone to be able to degrade, deny, or destroy my capabilities.
Or
disrupt.
Some of your fellow admirals wrote books. One of them wrote a book that portrays what will happen in 2 years' time. That's not very far from now when China and the US are going to collide over the China Sea.
This would be the good Admiral James Stavridis, I assume we're referring to.
Yes, well, you know the individuals.
Jim and I, we're friends. We've worked together.
You was both discharged on the same level, so I assumed you know each other. And one of the scenarios is on that day when the US is going to use not soft power but hard power just to say, listen, this is the red line, I'm not allowing you to go any further. Something is going to happen digitally on US soil. That's not yours, not the admirals, my basic understanding, like we saw between Iran and Israel, stuff are going to happen. And with more and more of our lives being switched to digital, it's not only data, that's what I'm saying.
Right, no, which I agree with. I think you have to acknowledge that there is now a digital component to everyday life.
חבר'ה, ניקח הפסקה קטנה מהפרק הזה ואני אספר לכם על נותני החסות הנוספים שלנו, והפעם נותני החסות שלנו זו חברת R&D משכנתאות, בשיתוף פעולה ראשוני וייחודי מסוגו עם עולם הפודקאסטים הישראלי. החבר'ה ב-R&D משכנתאות רוצים לעזור לכם למצוא את המשכנתה הנכונה עבורכם, שתתאים לפרופיל הסיכון שלכם, שתתאים למצב הפיננסי שלכם ולנכס שקניתם או לנכס שאתם רוצים למשכן מחדש בסביבת ריבית כה גבוהה, כשהמחירים כל כך גבוהים בארץ. הנה העצה שלי, דברו עם מומחה כלשהו. כן, אפשר לבדוק בכל ה-LLMים, ה-Chat GPT למיניהם, כל מיני שאלות, לשאול שאלות על משכנתאות ומסלולים, אבל זה לא בדיוק מה שאתם צריכים. מה שאתם באמת צריכים זה אנשים שידברו איתכם ויבינו את הצורך שלכם, אבל מעל להכל הם יודעים מה המצב כרגע בשוק, והם מדברים עם הבנקים, וזה לא בדיוק מידע שהוא זמין ברחבי האינטרנט, ככה שבכלל אפשר לקבץ אותו לאחד מהפינות הנידחות במודלים האלה, אלא אתם צריכים אנשים שבאמת עושים את זה על בסיס יומי, כדי שימצאו את הדיל הכי טוב עבורכם, וגם אם אתם חושבים שאתם יכולים לעשות את זה בעצמכם, מה שסביר מאוד אם אתם אנשים חריפים ועקשנים שאתם יכולים, אבל כנראה שאתם לא תגיעו לעסקה הכי טובה האפשרית, ובמחירים הנוחים של R&D משכנתאות, כל שנותר לי הוא פשוט להמליץ שתדברו איתם. אני דיברתי איתם, כה רבים מכם המאזינים כבר השתמשו בחסות הזו כדי ללכת ולדבר איתם, כי שיחת הייעוץ הראשונה היא בחינם. חפשו R&D משכנתאות וגיקונומי, או תיכנסו ללינק שאני אשאיר בדף הפרק, ורק אם מתאים לכם, אחרי שיחת הייעוץ הראשונה הזאת, תיכנסו איתם לתהליך של ייעוץ משכנתאות.
As well as in crisis, as well as in war. You have seen that play out in Ukraine, Gaza, Iran, China, the U.S. The reality is it's the nature of the world we're living in. And there is both the data as well as increasingly we are automating control. We are automating actual activities. Entire factories now that are automated that require remote access and oversight that potentially an actor could penetrate, stop. I mean, we've seen ransomware directed not just for retrieving access to data, but you've seen ransomware in some cases, a couple Japanese automobile manufacturers come to mind, where the adversary gained access to the control systems for the manufacturing line. And then the criminal group went to the company and said, it must be pretty tough to be a car company that right now can't manufacture cars because you can't control your assembly line, the manufacturing process. Hey, if you want to regain control, you're going to pay us money because guess what? We've locked you out. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're very right.
It's not only, again, I want to emphasize, it's not only getting locked out, I can do serious harm.
Right, like, you can disrupt it, you can deny it. Denial is a scenario we just talked about. You can destroy it. I mean, we've done some interesting things in my previous life with cyber as a destructive tool, as an offensive tool.
Yeah, it's not only spinning things that will spin faster, I can do so many other stuff these days. Having said that, and I'm alluding to stuff that allegedly Israel or the US did with Iran centrifuge.
I've read about that in the newspaper.
Yes, I'm sure you did. And every once in a while, I get the chance, the privilege to actually see the details on one of these things. And of course, I can share, of course. And when I do see it, what I think is, it's a shame. Because this is pure genius. This is what, like, the NSA is one of the most... You have access to everything. And I see something like...
Well, not access to everything, but you have a lot of capabilities.
Yeah, not access to data, just technologies. And I see like what NSO did. And NSO, and I know Shalev and I know the people there, and they gained that black reputation with a good reason. But technology-wise, only technology-wise, that's fucking brilliant. That's something that we should celebrate, but because it's being used for attacking, cyber attack, we can't even talk about it. So what I ask is, as the NSA leader, how many things have you seen that you said, God damn, this is brilliant.
There's plenty where you say, wow. What I used to tell our decision makers in the U.S., whether it was the Secretary of Defense, the President, our Congress, technology is reaching the point, and it was certainly this case in cyber from an offensive standpoint. Yeah. The only limitation is imagination. That you can literally create almost any outcome, almost any effect that you want. And the only limitation is your imagination. You can make it very insidious, so the target doesn't even realize what's happening. They see a slow, gradual degradation. Things just...
Even not that. A virtual machine inside your machine that you don't even know about.
Yeah, where you just don't recognize, you just don't see it. You can do things that are much more visible. You can do things that are very traumatic. You can do things that are relatively minor. It's amazing the amount of precision that you can use. Now, you can also apply it in a way, and you saw this with what the Russians did in Ukraine back in June of...
With the tractors?
2017, when they went with a supply chain attack in which they manipulated... God, I apologize. I'm blanking out on the...
No, the details are not that important. It's a cool story, but it's not that important.
So in June of 17, the Russians decide we're going to conduct a supply chain attack against Ukrainian infrastructure. And they decide that the way they're going to do this is by embedding or manipulating a Ukrainian tax software that they think that the target infrastructure uses. That they will manipulate the software, that they will upload a couple malware viruses within the software so that when the user upgrades uploads what they think is an update to a tax system, they've actually uploaded several malware. Except the Russians don't seem to care that, well, the Ukrainians aren't the only ones who use this tax software. And so suddenly we start in June of 17, we have this global, I would argue it's probably been the greatest global cyber event we've ever experienced. But suddenly, because lots of other entities use this tax software, now we're getting impact in Africa, Asia, literally all over the world. Knock on wood, it wasn't bad in the United States, but it can both be very precise, but if you don't care and you're sloppy, it can be very massive in scale.
And that's on the software level. You can go down to the firmware or the hardware, and only recently we heard that allegedly, some solar panels have specific devices. And now I'm asking you as a current partner in Team 8 and other stuff that you're doing, when the threat vector is not only software or firmware,
right?
That's in the transistors.
Well.
That's in the transistors. The ability of a private company, a private cybersecurity company, to guarantee something, to even say, listen, I got you covered in this or that way, when the attack vector is from the hardware, is not limited. It's not actually viable even.
Well, I think that's why. So if you're a company that provides cybersecurity services, cybersecurity products, you're very quick to say, here's what I'm defending you against. I'm not defending you against every potential scenario. To your point, that's just very unrealistic in the world we're living in now. So what you're trying to do is we generate, like Team A is an example, we generate capabilities designed to address very specific problems. Not, hey, this is the magic bullet that if you use this, it will protect your systems against software, hardware, firmware, physical intrusion.
People in Wiz and Palo Alto,
access.
don't listen. Yeah, I know you're trying, don't listen.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, but having said that, you now see the vector of attacks on actual physical devices.
Oh, yeah.
What can be done? I heard about it, so I try to read and I try to understand as someone that worked in that field of actually seeing the chips. If somebody did something.
So first of all, I try to spend some time asking myself, what am I buying and where is it coming from? Let me talk about me personally.
As a private citizen or the head of the agency?
As a private citizen. I'm talking as a private citizen now because I'm not the head of an agency. As a private citizen, because my family will often
used to be.
Ask me, right. But I'm just talking about right now.
Okay.
So I'll ask myself, what am I buying? Where is it coming from? And am I confident?
Cameras, switches, routers.
Now, you don't always have a perfect answer. I'm the first to acknowledge that. Then you ask yourself, okay, what are the things I have available to me to help mitigate the risk? Because I have to acknowledge I'm buying something potentially that I don't fully take a home router, for example. I'm not exactly sure where the router was built. I'm not exactly sure where
you can be certain that it's being produced in China.
Came from.
If somebody in your family loves drones, as a private citizen, most likely they are using a DJI
right,
product.
now that's the largest manufacturer in the world right now.
By a long shot,
right,
like 70% of it.
They have the majority of the
And if you want to use your
market.
phone just to see the picture, not only on your controller, you download an application.
Jack, but a phone's a good example. Do you like Android? Do you like the Apple operating system? Hey, what? So you do have some choices as a consumer to try to help you. Again, if you're looking for a silver bullet, well, I want absolute assuredness. I want absolute protection. I'm going, wow, I'm not sure that exists in the world that we're living in now. It just doesn't work that way.
Let's talk about the private sector as a partner in a fund. Going forward, we just, I think yesterday, to the day that we are recording, Palo Alto announced that they are buying
CyberArk.
For the small amount of $25 billion.
Yes.
Yeah, why not? It's a company from 1999 that some people thought they were going to die, and here you go, it's being sold for $25 billion. And Palo Alto is playing a very bundle kind of a game, like Microsoft did in the B2B or B2 enterprise market. What do you think? Usually when you hear like people like Ben Thompson, they say it's a game of bundling and unbundling over the years. And it seems like we are on a trajectory of a very strong bundling force.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue bundling is broadly the trend. It has been for a while now.
But
But on the other hand, one of the things at Teammate, one of the things we do is we've created a network of several hundred CISOs from around the world, and we'll spend a lot of time with, we call it the village. We'll spend a lot of time with these hundreds of individuals, and we'll say, hey, look, and they vary from all different parts of the world, all different sectors, large companies, small companies, public companies, private companies, and energy, retail, banking, etc. sectors all
because
all
Teammate is not only
economy.
cybersecurity these days.
Right. Oh yeah, fintech, healthcare, capital. One of the things we try to do is, hey, so what are you thinking? How do you see the world around you changing? Is an individual who is tasked with cybersecurity and protecting the networks, the data, and the functionality, if you will, of this hyper network world that your company has been a part of. And one of the things we just did our annual meeting in the United States. We hosted it this year in the United States. Normally we'll do it here in Israel, but we did it in the United States this year. And one of the things that was interesting was feedback from the group that bundling in the platform route has largely been the trend. But increasingly in some areas, we're starting to overlay very specific solutions, separate, if you will, from kind of this idea that I can go to Palo Alto and get the one size fits all.
It's not even one size fits all. They came to the realization that you don't have to have the best browser protection. For instance, maybe Talon is less adequate than Island. Maybe. I know both of them, so I don't want to say I'm not picking sides, but maybe. But if we are giving away Talon for free...
Come on, go with Talon, which started as a Teammate company.
Yeah, but let's go. I like Ofer. Let's go with Ofer. But I like Amiga as well.
He is a great individual.
Yeah, but Ofer is offering you Talon for free. Why not? And when you're a CISO, and we saw it's the same decision-making algorithm with Microsoft when Stuart Butterfield said, I'm going to wipe Teams' ass. Slack is so much better. Then he discovered that if you're offering something as a part of a bundle, the decision is easier. You don't have to be the best in every vertical if you're offering it as part of a bundle.
It's not a binary, it's one or the other. What I see...
They're trying to make it so.
Right. And clearly, the larger companies are arguing, hey, that's the direction you should go, because we'll give you scale. We'll give you economic efficiency. We'll give you the benefit of this broader expertise.
It's one platform. Don't use 40 tools.
So what I find is it's a bit of a hybrid in many cases at the moment, where it's a platform, but it's overlaid with in some areas where the CISO has decided, I'm running a lot of risk here. I do want a different level of protection over and above the broad baseline that I'm provided by the bundle or by the platform approach. So I just try to tell people, look, in my experience, and you take it for what it's worth, it's not one or the other. I'm seeing a bit of a hybrid in many cases these days for specific areas, not uniformly.
But then you have duplicates. Then
you do.
Then you buy a software that you can get for a much lower price, or you can get for free from the main bundler.
Yeah, but it's not. I would argue your price is a component.
But not the component.
It's not the component.
Yeah.
And so CISOs are always trying to find that balance. I have a budget. I have to have economic efficiency. But on the other hand, I also have to deliver the best security I can within this budget I have. And so in some areas, the risk is low, I think, and I'll perhaps view this as an area where I'll spend less money. In other areas, it'll be, this is high risk, either in probability of someone being able to access it, or in terms of if they're able to access it, high risk in terms of my ability as a business to function or operate. And they'll say in those areas, I don't want the lowest cost. I want the highest probability of success.
Okay, so let's remain with the village, with the CISOs. What do you think when CrowdStrike had their small hiccup?
Small, yeah.
Yes, it's not a hiccup, it's a throw-up maybe. But when it happened, I thought to myself, I wondered if the EDR market, if people now are going to say, I'm not giving you access to my kernel. That's done and dusted. I was completely wrong. Yeah. Everybody that sold their CrowdStrike shares were completely wrong. And we see that people are still are allowing a very much deep interaction with their system by cybersecurity companies. And it doesn't get any deeper than an EDR. Where do you think we are heading, especially with now the AI tools where you need to protect yourself from what people are actually just writing?
Yeah, I don't.
It's a trade-off, right?
Yeah. I was going to say, it's interesting. You saw the difference between, for example, I'm not picking good or bad, but if you just step back. So you saw the difference in network approach of a Microsoft product versus an Apple product, broadly. Microsoft allows kernel level access.
For your Windows machine.
For your Windows machine. Apple's does not. Apple's operating system doesn't.
And then your EDR is less capable on a Mac OS machine.
So I'm not arguing one is good, one is bad.
No, I'm just saying
two
facts.
fundamentally different approaches. So if you look at what happened with CrowdStrike, so you saw Microsoft systems very impacted. You saw Apple systems with minimal impact. But it's only one trade-off. It's only one area. So to your point, one of the things that I thought we'd see out of this was, well, let's review our kernel level policy. Are we really comfortable with
giving so much power?
We're giving so much access
to
trusted users. Theoretically, they're trusted users.
Yeah, but they're startups.
Right. Are they really trusted? What we should see there is, are they really trusted? You have, to your point, you haven't seen significant change. I thought there'd be more. I haven't seen as much.
I'm just seeing more and more teams launching towards a solution where I'm asking them, are you sure you're going to get that privilege? I already did for my partners.
Yeah. I wish that at times we were a little more restrictive in some ways about the level of privilege access. I do think that in some ways, broadly speaking, is an area that adversaries exploit. We just grant too much access. We grant too broad, too deep in many cases, not all, in many cases. It seems that people's view is it's an acceptable level of risk and it gives me a lot of benefits. I question this at times. Again, as a guy who used to attack for a living, I'm like, well, I love networks like that because it made it so much easier for us potentially to gain access.
I don't even need a 0 day. I just need someone doing it.
You know, like, hey,
it is what it is.
Yeah.
So having said that, you still need to pick horses in the race. And when you pick your next pony, when you pick the next CEO that is going to build the next billion or 10 or $25 billion company, where do you think it sits? In a product that is entrenched in the product like an EDR or something like what Wiz is saying? It's not even an agent. We are only hovering above everything. We're not even here. You won't even notice us.
Again, it's not a binary. It's going to be one or the other. I just don't see the market working that way. It is interesting.
So you're open for everything?
My argument would be you got to do it on a case-by-case basis, and it all boils down to what's your level of risk. What are you comfortable with? And that risk tolerance is different for different companies. Like I said, broadly, I wish we tamped down a little bit on it, but the market doesn't seem to be there right now. It seems that
everybody's running really, really fast.
Yeah, that it's all about speed and efficiency and cost.
Yeah,
those aren't bad values. I don't want to imply that. It is what it is, though.
I had the CEO of Fireblocks recently, and you see the speed of adoption for stablecoins. And when a big institute is now offering their clients more and more crypto services,
right?
You understand that the fluctuation is fast. I used to work for 2 years. We started a new bank, and you see just the amount of capabilities that you harnessed over a lot of years. Everything is very secured because you don't want to... I worked for your partner, Rakefet. And
a good woman.
Yeah, a good woman. And she was really open to learn new stuff, and I really like humble people, and she was that. But you have dozens of years of history of how stuff is working, and the changes are very, very traditionally slow. And now you see that with the current regime in the US and people like David Sachs, and they're saying, run fast. And I'm thinking from the side, I wonder the price of running fast in such a new brave world.
Yeah, I'm with you in the sense that I understand the desire to achieve results quickly.
And you have one Fireblocks, and you don't have a lot of companies offering protection in these areas.
But my view would be careful make sure you understand the risk you're running.
Do you see the incentive as a Team 8 kind of a fund to maybe create more companies like that?
Oh, it's definitely an area, I think, this idea about how do you mitigate risk. I mean, in the end, that's what cybersecurity is all about in the end. You're trying to mitigate risk to an acceptable level. or you're trying to enhance speed, you're trying to enhance security, you're trying to enhance the ability to execute outcomes. That, in the end, that's what you're trying to do. Now, you're using different techniques and different technologies, focused in different areas within the cyber ecosystem. But fundamentally, that's what you're trying to do.
Last topic, AI.
Never heard of it. What?
Yes. And
It's a flash in the pan. It has no future.
a bubble,
Exactly.
let me tell you that.
Highly speculative.
That meta thing is not going to work. 12% pre-market, it's a phase. Having said that,
All of that was a joke. That is not. AI is foundational to the future.
Of course.
Clearly.
But the rate of change is so fast that every once in a while, I just get exhausted.
Oh, yeah.
I feel out of it. I feel that I'm not being able to keep my finger on the pace. I am having days that I spoke with Idan Gazit, is the leader of innovation from GitHub. Small organization. And he said, I'm not now keeping track on everything new. I'm just waiting for the dust to settle. And I'm going to see what remains after the noise will diminish. But as an investor, you don't have that privilege.
Yeah, I was going to say, most people can't. I don't think that's a particularly effective strategy for most.
Yeah, but he has the ability to do that. It's his decision. You can't. How do you keep track?
So you try to maintain awareness by talking to people. You clearly have tools that are designed to access information about what's ongoing with AI. You try to talk to practitioners in the field about, hey, what are you seeing? What are you using? And you're looking at AI both from a threat, how is AI being used against you, but you're also looking at it as an opportunity. Hey, how can I use AI? How can I integrate it into my cybersecurity?
But not in a way that are going to elevate the number of false positives to
right. Well, don't get me wrong.
Unbearable amount of
But you're asking how.
Yeah.
And you're trying to understand the strengths, the weaknesses, and the trade-offs. False positive is an example of that. Hey, great technology. On the other hand, if it's going to create so many false positives for me, is it really effective? Is it really worth using? And that's just one example. So you're trying to understand it and look at it from multiple dimensions. One of the biggest changes, again, going back to that CISO village idea, if you go back a year or two, most CISOs, and I interact with CISOs all over the world, most in the past seemed to me very focused on AI being applied against them. I didn't see as much, hey, how could I use AI as a tool and integrate it? In this last session we did with the village, it was amazing how many CISOs were now asking themselves, okay, now I need to look at this as a tool to try to optimize my own abilities.
Replace employees with agents.
So, for example, SOX is a great idea where you're seeing a lot of CISOs asking themselves, can I use AI to help me automate portions of functionality in my SOX that people are doing right now? Couldn't I use AI to learn, anticipate, and actually implement so I don't have to use humans to do that?
Yeah, let's be frank. You have a limited amount of money that you can deploy as a CISO or CIO. And the trade-off is between salaries and buying software.
Yeah.
And if you can, and I'm sorry for being harsh, but that's just reality. If I can replace human employees with agents, maybe I'll have more money to buy more security.
So again, you're trying to ask yourself, given this budget, given my requirements, what's the best use of technology to help me optimize this? That's what you're trying to do. What's the best use of technology to help me optimize this? And one of the things you're trying to optimize is people. Why should I use people on a function that I can automate where I could use them in areas that are highly challenging right now to automate, where humans really make a difference? I think that CISOs are just trying to figure out, how do we optimize this architecture, this structure? How do I integrate all these capabilities together in a way that achieves the best security that I can? It's not going to be perfect, within my budget, within my resources, and helps optimize the ability of my organization to mitigate cyber risk to execute its mission. That's what you're trying to do.
Last question, and then you're off. There was a relatively famous American general that used his last speech to say about unknown unknowns and known unknowns. He was relatively good at what he's been doing. And I want to ask you about the same thing. What do you think in the next few years is the known unknown? And what's the unknown unknown? Just your guesstimation.
Geez, I wish I could tell you I knew. And it's an intelligence individual who was tasked in my previous life with actually predicting the future, so to speak. I always used to tell people, look, for 2 to 5 years, I feel pretty good. Once you start to get 5, 10 years down the road,
Quantum encryption?
It gets to be really hard. I think you're going to see quantum at a level where you're capable of disrupting encryption by the end of the decade. I think
That's not a lot of time. That's 4 years.
No, that's right. I think you're going to see it by the end of the decade. You can
That's your guesstimation or the working assumption by the U.S. government?
You're asking me my opinion. I don't speak for the U.S.
cheers.
government. My opinion. I think we're going to be there by 2030. It keeps accelerating. When quantum was an area of high interest when I was in government. We had an extensive quantum program because we were concerned both in terms of the adversary's ability to use quantum to break encryption. At the same time, we were asking ourselves, how could we use quantum to enhance our own cybersecurity, to enhance our ability to
New
execute
algorithms,
our own missions? So, like I said, I think quantum, big breakthrough by the end of the decade.
That's the known unknown, let's say. What's the unknown unknown? If you need to guesstimate.
So the greatest unknown to me is, what arises that has global impacts that we just didn't predict? Like, it had been a century. COVID starts in 2020. It had been a century since we had a major epidemic.
And a world war.
From back the Spanish influenza in 1918 and 1990, literally a century. What happens if it's not a century this time? What happens if it's not just medical? What is it? The thing I always try to figure out in my own mind is what's going on out there that could have global impact in a negative way that we're not thinking about right now. And the pandemic is the latest example we've seen where we paid attention to medicine. That's fair. Did we think we were going to get a global pandemic from medicine? No. And despite our best efforts, it truly went global.
I think the difference between a meme and a gene, it's not only a letter, it's an entire perception. And I think the chances of worldwide intellectual germ to cause havoc in the world is much greater than we give credit to.
This whole idea of, does some thought just gain so much popularity.
I just see the
around the world.
The intensity of ideas gaining traction and the amount of people sharing an idea because of the current. Take, for instance, everything that is happening. I'm not even talking about the Gaza war. That's, of course, the most interesting to me, and to see how the world reacts, and I totally get it, of course, but see something like an American Eagle commercial, and the amount of noise that Americans are now giving to a commercial, I think it's like an intellectual germ. And I'm not even saying it in a good or a bad way, because germs and viruses have a very crucial part in our life.
Right, they're part of our human
that's the reason I said the difference between a gene and a meme is only a letter, but it's an entire thing. And letting loose the ability to share ideas is a very interesting prospect of unknown unknowns.
It shows you, just like, to your point, just as we saw a germ or a virus move between people, these beautiful computer systems we have, now we're watching ideas spread like viruses, like germs. And again, many germs, many viruses, perfectly normal, part of the system, many ideas, much information, perfectly normal, perfectly valid. But what do you do when you get an idea, when you get information that galvanizes people and it pushes them in a direction that is either illegal, violent,
disruptive?
I mean, those are the things where you go, wow. So I very much agree. You could see ideas and information flow like you see germs and viruses, except now we can do it on a global scale.
Having said that, we'll just have the pleasure of living through interesting times.
You got it. Try to make a difference every day, I tell people, and worry about the things that you can control. Even as you try to fight for a better world,
one day at a time.
You can do one day at a time.
Thank you very much, Admiral.
Thanks, Remy. It was great talking with you. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Second.